Hello, everybody. It's Paul Power, and we're getting back to Robert Nelson and his story, alien contacts, and his what's going on in his life that he finds notable and is willing to share with us tonight or today, and as this goes on. So here we go. The 11th one.
11th installment.
11th installment.
To make proper sense of things, I have to, as I call it, turn the dial on the Wayback Machine. That refers to a cartoon series that kids back in the 60s used to enjoy. We have to step back in time a little bit, so to speak. Back in 1971, I believe it was in May, shortly after my birthday, in fact, a friend of mine, a young friend from the Edgar Casey group, the ARE group.
Roughly how old were you then?
21.
All right.
21, maybe 22. I think it was 21.
Uh-huh.
He came over to the cottage where I was living at the time, knocked on the door and said, "Hey, you know, I just heard about this group meeting they're having over on around the block from where you live here, some medical secretary's apartment. They got some spiritualists there teaching different stuff like how to go out of your body." And I said, "Well, I don't know if I really want to do that." And he said, "Well, I want to check it out." And I said, "Okay, all right. I drove us over there. We could have walked. It was that close. And we went in, and here's a small living room packed with over 30 people. Now remember, this is Florida. Hot. There was an air conditioning system there, but you wouldn't know it. It was turned on, but you wouldn't know it. So there was no place to sit. I think the guy got a place to sit. I ended up having to sit on the floor, and I still remember this to this day very clearly, in front of a piece of furniture that had this real pretty curly-Q piece on part of it that was digging right into the center of my back the whole time. I think I was there like 3 hours. We had a spiritualist there who was a spiritualist minister from Canada who did what she called making the circuit, where she would apparently come down from the West Coast, come up across the United States to Florida and back up the East Coast and back into where she lived in Canada. She was teaching high self meditation, also in this case was called Kundalini meditation. Some people I know, they get squeamish about Kundalini stuff. Some people don't.
There's some right-wing Christians out there that I've noticed the last 10 years that are getting all Satanist when anyone talks about
Kundalini, yeah.
Yoga, doing yoga.
Yeah, well, they're thinking about Kundalini too.
Which is very popular, of course, right now in this country. And it's very healthy, and I personally, I see nothing wrong with it at all.
Same here. And with the Kundalini, they refer to it as the serpent, or an energy spiral that goes up the spinal cord through different energy centers called chakras, and then out through the top of your head.
Let it be said, I think it should be mentioned that it doesn't, it's not being missed on us that, all these old references that go on around the world, references to snakes and serpents and all that, they are, in fact, references, to reptilian influence and, that race. And even though, up until relatively recently, and they're turning around, which nobody in the UFO community seems to have noticed, beside us, couple other people as being a really real thing that's happened, even though it's been roughly 15 years now. And I think there's reasons for that, but that's not to get too far
It's a whole
afield
different
here.
topic.
But the point is that with all these things, there's there a lot of things. There's a mixture of good and bad, blended together, and the whole reptile and snake thing is in fact a carryover from the reptilian in Anunnaki influence in our world. Now, does that mean that anything that has reference to that is bad and should be considered evil? I say consider the application. How's it being used? What's it about?
Yeah.
Because despite their bad history, just like any of these other races out there, good and bad, as well as ours, there's a lot of good, smart, intelligent knowledge out there. The last thing I'm going to say is you take Satanism, as bad as that you can get, what they carry on. Those people are very unimaginative, and that's something that a lot of races out there have, in fact, that we as humans don't have. We are full of imagination and creativity, but the Satanists among our race are very unimaginative, always have been. And so, what if you look into that? Not that I'm saying you need to or should, but I'll tell you what they basically do with everything is they take all good things and they just turn it up inside out, upside down. They don't they just reverse everything, and that's their that's the way they make things dark and bad, which to me is kind of pathetic. But I just thought that needs to be said. You can't walk through this world without running across some ground that there's been bad blood spilt. Does that mean you should not walk through the world and you shouldn't notice things, you shouldn't look up and take acknowledge and see if you can just like the Satanists take good things and subvert it, take the bad things and subvert them, reprocess them into something good. All right, so as you've noticed, I don't chime in too much with this. I'm trying to let this be Bob's show, but I wanted to say that.
Okay, something based on that same concept. You go to the opposite extreme into churchianity. A lot of times the Christian churches show the same amount of unimaginativeness. They'll often take like commercial jingles from TV or radio and then change them and put in Christian messages in place of whatever the commercials would have normally been advertising. Things of that nature. There was
What, in church? I mean,
the churches will do that with stuff that's from the secular world.
Oh my God, I haven't even noticed it.
Oh yeah, I noticed it a lot when I was growing up.
I got out of the church back in the 70s myself.
They took a popular radio station's advertisement that was even on bumper stickers and all, and rearranged it so that it would have the same look, but it said Jesus instead of that particular radio advertisement. It's just this is typical of people who mindlessly.
Well, the big religions, they are at their core big corporations after all.
Yeah. Okay. The Kundalini business, which if you go back to most ancient times, probably back before Atlantis. If my Atlantean son Yarid was listening to me, he'd be fussing at me that the term should be Atlan, A-T-L-A-N. Anyway, You go back to what we call Atlantis, or before that. These are the old wisdom teachings, the old mystery school teachings. Teachings I had to learn in another life of mine 2,000 years ago. I didn't come into the world with all my abilities like that. I had to develop into them as I grew up, just like I had to in this life.
Since you mentioned that, a lot of people are going to want to know. Are you willing to spend a few moments on speaking about the lost years of Jesus?
No, not right now.
Okay.
I don't remember everything from that life either, and I really don't, and it's probably good I don't, because I've got to keep my mind living this life, not then. I know who I was then, that's not a problem. I know some of the stuff that happened to me. In fact, people have asked me, what was the crucifixion really like? And I tell them, imagine hell and multiply by 10,000 and you're close.
Well, I'm just talking about basically, there was a huge chunk of your life.
I know, there's missing ears and everything.
Off the radar, and a lot of people have, a lot of really good spiritual people have delved into it, supposedly with the Akashic Records and meditation, what have you, and have discerned that you did in fact travel to the Near East and in India, and you studied various different temples and what have you, and that's how you you came which would make sense, because here it is, even though you're living a cosmopolitan life, and just by chance, I mean, how many people can say that they were ever invited, or ever, to go to a place where a woman is teaching, young people how to do Kundalini rising, procedures. So that's pretty,
Excuse me.
pretty interesting. It's synchronistic is the word I'm looking
Yeah. In this life, this woman was, actually, she was probably in her 70s. But full of spunk and energy. I mean, she'd enter a room and you could feel the energy difference. It was amazing. But again, like I said, this goes back to an ancient wisdom teaching, and there's no snake involved. There's no serpent involved. They just call it that. It's an energy form that spirals up the spine, as I talked about, through different energy centers called chakras. And if you do it right, it goes out through the top of your head, your crown chakra. And when that's done, you really gain, some people say you're Christed. That's one okay term to use for it.
Well, what did you do? You jumped ahead to when it's done. I mean,
what I did was I sat there and I
like breathing exercises, right?
went through breathing exercises and through also visualization, and she was telling us what colors to visualize and what was at what part of the spine, and then this next chakra, and the one after that spins faster, and the one after that spins faster, and as it got.
How many sessions did it take for this to
One.
awaken in you?
One.
Okay, so again, this speaks to all this built-up karma, and all the times you have done this in other lives before.
Made me realize this one, yeah.
the wheels were greased, so to speak. Okay.
Yeah.
Most people, any number of, even much lesser things, have to spend a lot of time, meditating and practicing and what have you. So I just, let that be known.
Yeah, and that with that darn piece of furniture that was gouging me in the back the whole time. There was no way I could move to get, situated more comfortably. So, anyhow, I just had to concentrate on what she was saying, and bit by bit, I was moving up my spine, and which was in better condition back in those days, and I got to the point where I got to the crown chakra, and then it's almost like breaking free. It's best experience I can, or no, the best description I can give of it. The experience is like literally breaking free. It's like, you may remember in the Superman the movie, the Christopher Reeve Superman, flies up out of a pool of water that he's in and goes up through a glass dome overhead and breaks out of it, as though he's breaking free of it.
So that's what it felt like.
It's yeah, and it's almost like a gushing up. And the amount of freedom you have. I mean, I was out of my body, looking at people around the room. And after a while, some of them began making the journey. And I was able to see their astral cord going up to a foggy-looking cloud above their bodies as their soul. Poor guy who went with me didn't get anything out of it. Afterwards, he said he kind of wished he hadn't gone that night. And I said, well, frankly, I'm glad I did go. So it worked out for the good in one way, at least. It was though a lot of the work that I had been doing up until that point, built up to that point. It was a matter of, I think about 2 months later, that I met Michael, or as I called him for a while, Archon, at that medical secretary's place, as I told you in a previous installation that we're doing. But I do want to point out again, the reference to the serpent is just an old-fashioned, nowadays out of date, reference, term. There's nothing to do with serpents or evils or devils or demons or reptilians or anything like that, other than the wisdom, the ancient wisdom school teachings that some of the reptilian astronaut races did teach humans here on Earth.
There you go.
So, that point, very important. I guess it had to happen before my meeting Michael again, and before everything else that came after. I began doing out-of-body work out over the Earth. As I previously stated, my orbits over the Earth were horrible. They tell you, I had no talent. I would try to go somewhere in an orbit from one point to another, and I ended up zigzagging all over the place in space. I did make it to the moon.
You talking about before the Kundalini experience?
No, after.
Oh, after.
It was that experience that made all this possible.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought.
And then, although I did do some out-of-body unintentionally at times before, but it wasn't like this. Finally, I learned when I was in orbit to plot one point to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and I could actually go around a complete orbit that way. Then it became more natural like it is now. I just don't even think about it, I just do it. At one point, my mom had gone to visit some friends of hers in Virginia. She was there about a week, came back, and she said, Bob, I want to test your out-of-body skills. I said, great. And she said, go to the house, the people where I was, my friends where I was visiting, and tell me what you see in their living room. Well, I described it to a T. I described it correctly. And then over the couch, I saw this painting, and I said, I don't understand this, Mom. It's a seascape painting that I can understand, but it's storms and a ship that looks like it's about to go down. I don't get it. That doesn't make sense. This can't be right. And she said, Bob, you're exactly right. That's exactly what's over, a big painting of that over their couch. So this gives you an idea about out-of-body. I can give you more examples in some of our further installations. But I think we're ready for the next installment about now.
Yeah. Well, that's a good, interesting chapter. So this lays out to people your coming of age, so to speak, with your
Yeah.
beginning of you coming into your own, if you will.
Yeah.
and realizing that what you can really do.
Mm.
And I'm gonna finish it up at the end by saying, all you flat earthers out there that are listening to this, you want to know for sure, learn out of body, and then like Bob, you can, or anyone else that does out of body,
See it for yourself.
you can see the world is round for yourself. Okay?
Certainly is.
I mean, this CIA psychop has got to end soon. That's such a bullshit distraction, for our trying to awaken here. All right.